Alright, hello and welcome to Mewoosh. Today we are going to talk about tube amps, particularly this one. This is a Fender Blues Jr 15-watt tube amp, and I'm going to compare it to my old faithful GDEC3. It's a 30-watt transistor amp. It's a modeling amp. So the idea was, I've never owned a tube amp before, and I wondered whether or not all the hype about tube amps is really going to be worth it. Is it worth it to spend $800 for this, or are modeling amps just fine? Now this is like 2010, so it's super old by today's standards, and Mustang, for example, replaced the GDEC, and they're now on their third or fourth generation. So one of the things that is improving is the sample rate that they're using. They're using faster chips and higher sample rates, more power to a CPU and more memory being used and whatever else, right? It's a faster computer. This is sort of their early, I think this is a second generation GDEC, or maybe it's third, I don't know, because it says 3 on it. I don't know, I didn't research that. When I bought it, this was just being discontinued. The Mustang had just come out, and I thought, wow, for like, I think I paid $180 for this thing, and I thought, well, that is just going to do me fine. And the idea was that I could make a kind of, you know, any amp sound that I wanted, and I was never really satisfied with the sounds I was getting out of the equipment that I had. So the idea was, if you have a modeling amp, particularly one that can do all sorts of different things, then you're way ahead, because then if you don't like one sound, you just change it. Try something else. So that was the idea. So to compare these two, it doesn't make sense to just play through one, pull the cable out, put it in the other one, and play through the other. Let's eliminate that by just sort of playing something general, some perfunctory vamp through a looper pedal, and then I've got a foot switch, like an AB switch on the floor here, and I'm just going to switch back and forth. So let's get that started. So there's nothing more Fenders than a single coil. So this will do just fine. But what we're going to do, this is a Zoom G3X actually, but I'm not using the expression pedal for anything. And what I'm going to do is just play, never mind the flashing light, that's a like tap tempo metronome basically. And I'm just going to play a little sequence and then step on it. So I don't really care what the tempo is. I'm not really paying attention to that light. But here we go. There we go, right? Now, that's in memory. That's just going to keep on playing. So I get rid of this. And I've gone ahead already and set it up so that these two amps kind of basically sound the same, and they're at the same volume. This thing, everything's at 12 o'clock really, and then the gain, or is it called gain? It's actually called volume, but it functions as the gain. And that is at like 2 out of 12, whatever that is. 7 o'clock? I don't know. So anyway, let's just have a listen to this through this amp and then switch. Whoops. So you can tell in the comparison it's very close. It sounds like this has got a little less mid-range right now. It just sounds scooped a little more. I actually find that just slightly more pleasant to listen to. But this gives, how do you describe it? It's a slightly purer sound. I don't know if that's even a fair comparison. Part of the problem is I have this thing plugged in. This is a micro USB connection into the PC, which is how I control all the patches and change the levels and stuff. You can do it through these buttons on the front, but one of the reasons this was discontinued is that interface is terrible. It's got one fidgety knob for changing things, and then you can adjust the amp or the effect settings, and band is like the backing track, and phrase, I don't even remember what that's for. But anyway, you can adjust the settings, but you have to jump through them one at a time. So you go through all of the inputs on the amp, and there's also, the amp's going to have compression or reverb. It does, I can't remember. Some of them do, I think. Maybe not. But I've turned all that off. So right now, this patch, this setting, is supposed to be a blackface clean. That's what they call it. So it's just your standard Fender amp, and I think it would be comparable to this, except this is a little more of a driven sound. So I don't know my amps. Princeton maybe, I don't know. So the Fender, I can now adjust the gain or the volume knob, and that's going to drive the sound a little more, and then I can adjust this one using the patches on the computer to try and make it sound the same. So let's see what that's like. So just by making that adjustment, I got, again, it's not exact, but it's very, very close. This thing got louder when I adjusted it to get more of a drive sound out of it. So I had to turn the volume up a little bit to compensate for that, make this one a little louder. I could have turned the master down, I guess.
Okay, hold on a second. So it occurred to me during editing that I'm comparing a clean amp to more of a drive amp. And I did that by using, just out of habit, using the stomp box pedal, which was already in the patch. I had it turned off, but as soon as you adjust it, it turns it back on. So we're not exactly comparing apples to apples. So the blackface amps are like the Princeton, the Champ, that kind of thing. But there are also Fender amps that don't have the black face, which is the knobs exposed forward with the top hats and so forth on that angled panel. They actually have them in a cutaway on the back, sort of on the top, right, facing up. So there are a number of sort of tweed amps and other amps that are a better match maybe for this guy, right? So here's me playing through a humbucker equipped guitar through the Junior, and then I'm going to have a patch on this guy that sounds the same. Here we go.
But the point is that just going through these, and we're not going to compare these for which one takes pedals better, because I don't have any pedals. I've got this digital effects thing, but I'm not much of a pedal guy anyway. I just sort of like finding a drive sound that I like and sticking with that, boosting it for a solo, and that's basically it. You want to play cleaner, you just sort of pick a little lighter, strum lighter, turn down the volume knob on the guitar, and then you get that effect. So would I buy an $800 amp for the like purist or for the romanticist in me? Is that a word? or just stick with a modeling amp. Now, this is an old modeling amp. Maybe I should upgrade. But would I rather have something fancy and pure? But, I mean, tubes are like $20 each, and this has several of them, and over time you have to replace the tubes. Well, then what's that going to cost, you know? Well, you're $100 in by the time you've changed a bunch of tubes. You basically keep buying the amp every time you do that. Well, if you have one of these, I've had this thing for years and years, and it's never failed. It sounds the way it sounds. It may be that the effects are slightly digital-y, but I can get the drive sound that I want without having to make the thing really, really loud, which is helpful because I'm in a very small room down here. On stage, no. We mic the amp. So I used it actually as a monitor. I just pointed this thing at me and then had the mic in front of it, and then so I can hear my amp direct, and then everyone else is here. I don't even need a monitor on the amp because I have one. I just need a monitor for mics and stuff. So yeah, in my opinion, I stick with this guy, or I'll upgrade maybe to the 100 watt for free. I can just keep the one I have, which is good for what I'm doing with it. I found that the 80s transistor amps were really, really loud, but it was a harsh loud. It wasn't a pleasant, loud sound. I had an 80 watt, it was a Fender M80, I think it was called, and it was painful if you turned it up. It really wasn't a pleasant sound. And it had a built-in distortion, and even that just wasn't, it never satisfied me. I was never really happy with that amp. And having this modeling amp totally changed things for me, because then I could just sort of pick through all the different sounds and tune it and craft it to just what I wanted it to sound like, and then play against that. And that made, man, that made such a difference in how much joy I got out of playing. So there's something to be said about that. If you're just starting out, my advice is modeling, because then you've got a world of things that you can try, and you can actually find the sound that you're going for. If you've got the money for a tube amp and all the pedals and all that kind of stuff, hey, all the power to you. But if you're starting out and you are maybe at risk of it not working out for you, then my advice would be get something that is the most practical choice. And I find a modeling amp fits that perfectly. All the best. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.